So welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club's Fireside Chat. Our purpose is to engage the power of diverse worldwide talent to accelerate the global evolution to Industry 4.0. We accomplish this by hosting and supporting respectful, thoughtful, and interdisciplinary open conversations and creating quality content on a wide-ranging Industry 4.0 topics to expand the reach of our community. We're glad you've decided to join us today for our Fireside Chat with Lyman Tschanz. Lyman is going to be sharing his experience in leading Rockwell Automation's Industry 4.0 journey. So my name is Mike Ungar, and I'm an Industry 4.0 co-founder. For the past couple of years, I've been a focal point business coach and executive coach. Prior to that, I spent 35 years at Michelin North America in a variety of continuous improvement, operations, finance, and HR roles. So I'd like to introduce Lyman a bit further today, if I could. And Lyman, I probably mispronounced your last name. Can you help me with that? What's the best
Tschanz.
Tschanz.
You did well.
All right, Lyman Tschanz, thank you. So Lyman provides business consulting and leadership support for industrial companies of all sizes in the areas of supply chain and manufacturing strategy, operational improvements, and general management. He provides practical working knowledge in developing and implementing smart manufacturing and Industry 4.0 strategies. Most recently, Lyman was the Vice President of Operations for Rockwell Automation, where he managed 18 global manufacturing facilities to produce a complex mix of automation products in a smart manufacturing environment. While at Rockwell, he also provided advice to Fortune 500 leaders regarding Industry 4.0 smart manufacturing. Lyman is a national speaker with focus on Industry 4.0. He's also a leader in the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce Association, an advisor to Connected Systems Institute at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and is engaged with the Wisconsin Center for Manufacturing and Productivity and a regent for the Milwaukee School of Engineering. He's a member of the National Association of Manufacturers and has a BSNME and an MBA from the University of Wisconsin. Go Badgers. Lyman, we're glad you could join us today and take some time from your busy schedule to share your insights. As we get started, for those listening on LinkedIn Live, if you have a question for Lyman, please share it in the comment section, and we're going to try to answer it during our time today. So Lyman, that's an awful lot to share in your bio, but tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're doing and just about your experience, if you don't mind.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure to be here today with you and with the people that are listening to us today. As you described, I've had a good education that started my career here in Wisconsin. I've worked most of my career in Wisconsin, which is a very manufacturing-oriented state. And my last 16 years were with Rockwell Automation. I worked with a number of Fortune 500 companies prior to that, and have been involved in a variety of roles, but primarily manufacturing, some general management in my career. And, I had the privilege of learning about Industry 4.0 through the School of Hard Knocks, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more as we get on here. But I was Rockwell Automation was an early adapter of this, and at the time I didn't realize how far in front of it we were. And it was a learning journey that there was no playbook at the time. Let me say that when we did it. It's getting better now, but it's still difficult. I also learned about Industry 4.0 through a variety of conferences that I've attended. There's lots of conferences on this topic where you get to hear lots of pitches from lots of suppliers. And I also had the privilege of doing some consulting, helping other companies hear about my experiences and help them think through what their strategy would be on this subject.
Yeah, thank you for that. And we were talking yesterday, and you were sharing that you're blessed with some grandchildren as well when you're not doing this heavy lifting with Industry 4.0.
Yep, I live in Heartland, Wisconsin, which is a little rural community. I can see some cows out my window as we're having this meeting today, but I'm about 25 minutes west of Milwaukee, and I'm privileged to be married to my high school sweetheart. We've been together for a long time. We're blessed with 3 happily married boys that entered our lives many years ago, and we now have 8 grandchildren.
Wow.
Ages of 1 and 8, and they're all a bike ride from my house.
Oh my goodness.
keep me pretty busy.
That's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. We have 3 grandkids ourselves, and as they say, sometimes you wish you could have skipped parenthood to have those grandkids, but you wouldn't appreciate them as much, I don't think so.
No.
It's wonderful. Well, so you started talking about that you almost got started with Industry 4.0 at Rockwell, almost not realizing you were in it. Can you go into that a bit more depth? How did you get started, or when did you realize you were on an Industry 4.0 journey at Rockwell? And maybe take us through that altogether.
Mike, if you're okay, I'll maybe give a minute overview quick of Rockwell Automation, because although it's not a necessarily well-known company, the customers that Rockwell has are everywhere: Federal Express, Amazon, oil and gas, Procter & Gamble, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of people don't know about Rockwell. It is the largest company in the world dedicated to automation products, systems, and software. Headquartered in Milwaukee, publicly traded, revenue of about $7 billion, 25,000 employees. It's primarily known in the market as Allen Bradley. If there's any double E's on the phone, you probably learned about automation through our Allen Bradley products. Sells through distributors, and it's a mix of very high mix, low volume company with some standard products, some configured products, some engineered to order products, plus software. So it's a complicated company, 18 manufacturing plants, with only 4 plants in the US and 3 in Wisconsin, as a matter of fact. So maybe with that, how did this journey get started at Rockwell? There was an effort by Rockwell about 20 years ago to move beyond their product solutions and a number of components that build an automation solution for equipment manufacturers, and they began moving into software solutions. And at the same time they did this, of course, most companies are facing this. Products are being updated from being I'll call it a dumb device, in this case, a point-to-point wired device in an automation product, to becoming smart connected. So Rockwell entered into software, and they began offering smart connected products where the device, many devices have a circuit board on them and are doing something with data. And really where this started when I joined the company in 2006 is that Rockwell decided to launch a massive business system overhaul, which they called global process transformation, but it was primarily the company converted to running SAP globally. And at the same time, they launched MES software solution, which they offer to customers, called FactoryTalk Production Center. Maybe I'll stop there, Mike. That's kind of how it got started. It was a transition, wakening up to software, smart products, and then a business system transformation that really brought it to the company.
So at the time, was Rockwell trying to solve a problem they had, or was there a technology plan? Tell me what came first?
So the problem was that the company was trying to be global. They sell products literally around the world, and many of the products they sell are U.S. companies that take their business to other regions of the world. Partner companies, a paper company that has a paper mill in Wisconsin and builds a paper mill in China, as an example. So the problem they were trying to solve is they're trying to be a global company, but they had all these disparate business system solutions. And so they said, listen, for us to be successfully globally, we have to be on a single business system across the company. And I would say it was maybe not an afterthought, but it wasn't a primary focus. Well, hey, while we're doing this, why don't we launch this MES system at the same time? We sell it to our customers, and if we're going to do it, let's launch it with it. And really not thinking about what the benefits of that MES solution were going to be. It's, hey, let's just do it at the same time. We want to live in our manufacturing plants what we sell to our customers. That's really what drove it.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And I can imagine with 18 facilities, not everybody progressed at the same pace. How'd you handle that? That's not such an easy thing to keep together.
Yeah, it was literally a 10-year journey, almost a journey to get through all of the manufacturing facilities. The way the company did it was facility by facility, region by region. First couple were really rough of trying to provide continuity of service during the business system transition and people learning the new system. And then as we got later in the game, we certainly got much better at it. Now, most of our challenges were implementing and stabilizing SAP. And I would say that one of the big transformations that we had in the company was the importance of maintaining data, maintaining systems, and truly letting the system tell you what's going on in the company versus clipboards and paper notes and people's tribal knowledge. But as we got through SAP, then the company began this cultural transformation that Rockwell called the connected enterprise, but basically merging this MES system. Step one was stabilize SAP. Step two was starting to get some benefits from SAP. Step three was getting benefits from this MES software solution.
If we follow those different steps you just described, can you give me sort of a timeline for each? So, you're going from SAP then to the connected enterprise. And was that a very deliberate thing, or did you just sort of realize you were doing it?
It was very deliberate. I mean, I don't know how many people have gone through ERP system conversions. They're painful. Typically, it takes 3 to 6 months after you go live on a new ERP system for that to settle down. So priority one is just get through the ERP implementation, get that working, get your people trained, and get it stabilized. Then after 6 months, you start looking for, I'll call it new opportunities and business processes. You start seeing benefits from the ERP system business processes, and then it starts generating this next level of opportunity because you start seeing things in a new way or seeing things that you couldn't previously see because of the combination of your business system. And so these either problems or opportunities, however you want to think about it, begin to pop up in front of people. Yeah. And our first implementations of MES were when we saw the initial opportunities and where we were struggling with some of our issues operating the plant, as we were trying simultaneously to drive continuous improvement in our plant operations.
That makes me think of another question related to that. Did you integrate the evolution, the Industry 4.0 evolution into your continuous improvement efforts, or were they really separate for the most part? How did that unfold?
I would say it was separate. I mean, I would call when your organization has gone through this cultural transformation of valuing data and discipline in your operational transactions, it creates this environment where you can begin to see things through your business system that you used to rely on expert eyes out at the war front to see it. I'll use it in the war front, right? There's some problem out on the plant floor. Historically, you'd rely on people with tribal knowledge who knew the business and say, hey, I know what that is and I'm going to go fix it because I know it. When you convert to this data-driven transactional discipline environment, you start seeing the opportunities in the data. And when you see something, you shift towards looking to the data and the process maps and the systems versus being entirely people dependent. So it's the opportunities become visible as you get more disciplined with data and systems transactions. I'll say it that way.
As you talk about that, I think about the challenge of, so, we talk about always at least in my experience in manufacturing, I think of things like a pendulum. You see a weakness and then you work on it, bring it back to center, and sometimes you go too far, right? Mm-hmm. Did you ever find yourself going so far to rely on the data that you stopped asking the operators? Did you run into that problem for their feedback and their input?
No, in fact, I would say it was the reverse. You get much better at asking the operators what is happening and what are their problems. And the difference between legacy and this smart manufacturing environment is you ask people to provide that information in a systemic way.
Ah.
Okay, and I could give you an example maybe.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be great.
So an example is in the past, some operators working on a line or a machine and the line goes down. Well, historically, somebody would go over and ask the operator, hey, what's going on? And he'd say, hey, we ran out of parts, a motor overheated, I'm having a quality problem and I'm waiting for somebody to tell me what to do, et cetera. And the operator would tell, that was a verbal exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you're in this disciplined, data-driven environment, when the line goes down now, we want an operator in the system to tell us, hey, I'm having a downtime event. And they literally go in the system and click on a box and they say, I'm having a downtime event. And this downtime event is in this category: material, people, systems, maintenance, quality, whatever. And then further, they might even click a layer deeper and say, hey, and I'm missing hardware, or I am missing some key components that were supposed to be in a kit. And there you begin predefining these downtime codes, and operators pick on them, select them, and then the system tracks how long the downtime event happened. And the system electronically tells somebody there's a downtime. They don't wait for somebody to walk over and see what's going on. So the operator's voice gets louder and much more consistent through these predefined drop-down categories of issues.
Okay. And so what you're really what I think I hear you saying is that you actually are more engaged with the operators because you're now able to ask them more questions about what they put into the system. Is that what I understand?
They feel that they can speak up far easier through a system on the screen in front of them. They feel empowered to tell somebody what's going on. They don't need to be asked. And I think that combination of, by the way, there's a couple of aspects. This cultural thing is really a big deal.
Yes.
Providing the most important information to the operator, relying on the voice of the operator through the system to tell us what's going on, and then data that the operator might not even know is being tracked. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. How many pieces per hour did we build last hour? If you go and ask an operator that, in a legacy system, they wouldn't know that. In a smart system, it probably tells them, hey, are you building at the rate you should be building? Did we build the right ones? And they know it. In fact, they probably know why they did what they did. So it really engages an employee if you start listening to them. And there's a huge shift in management and leadership required here too. Instead of the managers and leaders being the smart people and telling everybody what's going on,
right?
Managers and leaders start coaching the employees to, I won't say be self-directed, but to, hey, we want them to tell us what's going on. We don't want to tell you what's going on.
That's a great point. That's a really great point. Hey, just want to pause for a second and remind our audience, if you have a question for Lyman, we're happy to try to take those. If you put your questions into the comments, if you're listening on LinkedIn Live, we'll be happy to pose those questions to Lyman. So thanks. So I wanted to talk a bit further about the frontline workers. So I'm sure that not everybody got really excited about this technology. How did you help them adopt or adapt to this new technology?
Oh, I'll have to think about that. Let me say that we had a number of people, primarily in manager leadership roles, that didn't adapt very well, which is different than the production employees. Because the production leaders were used to being, I'm going to call it this, powerful people that carried a clipboard around, and they were the all-knowing source of knowledge in an area. And we said, hey guys, we want you to know what's going on, but we want your employees to be the individuals that tell us that and feel part of it and are closest to it. So you don't have to track it. The system will track it for us and help them express their voice. Well, a bunch of managers and leaders didn't get that. They were used to, I don't know if the words I use are command and control environment.
Yes.
You show up and salute and go to work and sweat and ask any dumb questions. And now it's the reverse. Hey, how can I help you get your job? What's in your way? Are you having any troubles with the system? I saw you entered this. Don't quite understand it. And so the leadership had a shift the way they deal with the employees. Now, the employees, of course, their first reaction was, this is a bunch of baloney, and they're just telling us this, and this isn't really how it's going to work. And I've been here a long time, and that's not how this company works.
Right.
And so we did a lot of activities related to the general topic of employee engagement. We did annual attitude surveys. We had employees give us comments, and there was I'll say a cultural awareness of what was going on to put data in the power of our production employees and have management leverage the system and leverage what they're hearing the employees talking through the system versus the other way around, the managers telling the employees. And it was a long journey. I would say at the beginning, there was a lot of resistance. People naturally resist change. That's always a problem anytime you're driving change.
Right.
We learned this lesson, Mike. I'll say you had to tell people what was changing. You had to tell people why it was changing, which would include the benefits of why it was changing. And then most important, how does it impact you?
Yes.
What's your WIFM? And you had to really get good at saying, listen, just don't do it because we say, hey, here's what, here's why, here's it impacts you. And we want to hear what you think about it. Let us know how it's working.
Yeah, the WIFM, what's in it for me.
A listening organization.
That's fantastic. We were talking before the broadcast a little bit in about how you go about getting started. And you talked about the importance of leadership. Can you kind of highlight how you might start a journey like this? You know, you mentioned to me, I think, starting at the top, but I know you got to start at the top, but you also got to include the shop floor. So just take me through how you get started with this sort of thing.
I think the beginning of getting started is someone has to decide that it's time to make a big change. You can't do smart manufacturing on an island as a pilot in one area of the plant because the entire organization won't embrace it. You're just going to struggle. You might get some benefits, but you're not going to do it. The beginning of this is, I'll use these three phrases, and I'm stealing them from, I think, McKinsey or Accenture. I don't remember who, but it's someone at the top has to think big, start small, and move fast.
Mm-hmm.
So don't try to do everything at once. Yes, you will start small, but you're starting small with the intention of having a big implementation. Learn as you go. Don't try to be perfect on what you're doing because you're not going to be perfect at the beginning. It's more of an evolutionary journey. And I'd say a very big part of this is, without a doubt, common standardized processes and systems across the organization wherever possible. So you got to believe in standardization. You have to respect data, and you need somebody to drive change. Maybe you say, hey, we're not broken. We're making and delivering product every day, but how much better could it be if you drove this change? And somebody at the top has to have that vision and stay committed to it because it's a long journey. It's not a short journey.
And how do you involve them in the shop floor? I mean, you probably want them involved more than just telling them that here's something new to work with, that you need to work with. How do you involve them in this journey?
I would say one of the, I'll use an example here. I mean, broadly, to answer your question directly, broadly, you can't, and I don't want this to sound wrong about our production employees because they're so important to what we do, but you can't tell them too far ahead. You need to talk to them in close proximity to when they're going to see change and say, hey, this is coming at you, and we want you to understand it. And you have to spend quite a bit of time communicating what's coming and communicate it fairly close to when the changes are happening. And then let them know that, hey, we're here to listen to you, and your role in this is important, and here's what your role is. We want to hear your feedback. And you probably begin dialogue like you haven't had in a while. A lot of organizations don't do that very well. When you're doing change, you have to do it. The second thing that I think really starts getting employees think about it, this is another cultural aspect. You shift the organization to what I'm going to call standardize and copy standard solutions fast versus each location and everybody inventing their own solution. In the past, some maintenance guy shows up on third shift and fixes the machine miraculously. We'd all reward him and say, man, that was great. In this new journey, you say, okay, what did you find with that downtime on third shift? What can we do to build that into our system and process so it never happens again? And let's standardize that across all locations. So you start rewarding the employee behavior that builds improvements into the systems versus acts of heroism. Now, some employees don't like that. They like being the heroes. But there's a lot of employees that weren't the heroes. The majority are not the heroes. And they start recognizing their voice is important and they're part of helping standardize and improve the company. And then a minor point is we elected to turn on a new employee recognition program at the same time, where employees could be individually recognized for their initiative and involvement.
That sounds great. You hit on one of the things that I think is a principle of any successful manufacturing environment, and that's a general respect for standards.
Yep.
Okay, and an understanding of that, and that's hard, especially we know you've worked around the world. I know, and as I have as well, the American culture doesn't like to be told what to do. Okay, and
absolutely,
so it's always a challenge. But I think you said it earlier. If you explain what you're doing and why it's important and how it affects them, you have a pretty good chance of getting the standard to be respected, I think.
Mike, you mentioned something I want to add to this. When you have these standard processes, an extremely difficult part of the journey is to develop standard metrics. Mm-hmm. Whether it's quality, productivity, service. I'll give you the service example, and you'd say, well, come on, everybody knows how you measure service. Well, okay. When you ship something late, do you count it late when it's due, or do you count it late when you actually ship it? And you say, well, we must be the same on that. Nope. I can tell you, even a company like Rockwell, we didn't count a service miss the same. We weren't counting days late. And some plants would look way better than others, and you'd say, well, what's going on? Well, they're measuring it different. Now, people will tell you, well, you don't understand. We are different. No, we have to measure it different because we're different. No, you're not.
Yes.
Manufacturing plant. That's
I hear you. Yeah, that's good. So I really appreciate the examples and some of the insight you shared about Rockwell. I know that you talked with other leaders about their journey. Rockwell was a big company. How should a smaller mid-size manufacturer get started on this Industry 4.0 journey? But they maybe don't have the same resources as Rockwell would,
Let me segue for a minute. I'm going to go back to a little bit of my background, Mike. I've become involved with an initiative called Industry Imagine 2030. Mm-hmm. And the goals of that organization are primarily to revitalize manufacturing in the United States. And Industry 4.0 is one of the legs of the stool, one of the legs of the stools to bring that to life. How you begin to gain support of that effort is very, very difficult. How big can the improvements be? How big are the investments? For most companies, they're big. Let me say that. And one of the challenges that we've realized through Industry Reimagine 2030 is that for small and medium-sized companies, there are not a lot of well-known standard Industry 4.0 solutions out there. Mm-hmm. There are some. So one of the things we're trying to do is find what those are and help scale them and make them bigger. But I think the real point of starting for any company is, number one, the leadership in the company has to develop a fundamental understanding of what Industry 4.0 is. You hear all these crazy buzzwords, additive manufacturing, MES, digital twin, data security, big data, data analytics, blah, blah, blah. A management has to develop a fundamental understanding of this. And it's not taught in many schools. Now, it's starting to begin taught in schools, but there's not many schools that teach it. And then secondly, either you decide you're going to hire an external expert and bring them into your organization who has this knowledge, or you go find a trusted partner, an external solutions provider of some sort that you have a trusting relationship with and say, hey, can you help us on this journey? But if you go out and listen to all the various sales pitches out there, you'll go blind and you won't do anything. So get yourself educated, find trusted partners, look for opportunities to build off successes others have had. That's what I would say. And there's a lot of work there to be done yet for small and mid-sized companies.
No, you raise a very good point about trusted partners. A small, mid-sized company often can't afford the staff like a Rockwell. And so finding someone that you can rely upon to help you solve those short-term problems with these new solutions can really pay big dividends, I think.
I mean, there's some areas, common areas where companies can look. Literally every state has these manufacturing extension partnerships, often a state organization. Most states are trying to begin to provide support in this area. You'll see a few university academic efforts at supporting this, where you can get some basic training on what these. So I'll use another example. There's a class here in Milwaukee at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee called Introduction to the Connected Enterprise. It's a 3-credit class, lasts the semester, and it gives the fundamentals of, hey, what is smart manufacturing? And it starts with what's driving it, the move to big data, cheaper computing, ability to transmit massive amounts of data, artificial intelligence and software, and it moves through the various topics: security, software, digital twins, et cetera, et cetera. So there are, you can find areas to learn this through state agencies and academics. And there are consulting firms out there trying to do this and make a living of it. It's really hard to find a consultant, though, that you're comfortable with. And be cautious when the suppliers come in. When a supplier is guiding a company, guess what? They're going to steer you towards their solution. They're probably going to be independent and neutral.
No, you raise some good examples. I know, for those that are listening, you mentioned you're in Wisconsin. I'm in South Carolina, and our MEP has a couple of great approaches. We have an organization called the Op Exchange, led by Mike Demos, and the Op Exchange is a group of 170 companies, and they help each other advance in Industry 4.0 and other related manufacturing topics by going and seeing each other's facilities. And it's quite, and sometimes they'll do a virtual conference, but it's very good. And the MEP offers, the regional vice presidents offer access to whatever expertise is needed in this area. So you're right. That's one way, if you have a solid MEP, to really help drive progress in this area.
There are a number of conferences. Most states tend to have some conferences on this subject, whether it's Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, whatever they call it. What I'll say is, if you go to those, there are often the most to me, and I've attended many of them, is the breakout sessions and the discussion groups. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you typically hear a bunch of sales pitches from the various suppliers that show up at those and set up a booth and they want you to come and hear their story. Now, you might, if you can find someone else in your industry or with a similar use case that you have, maybe your problem is machine uptime. And hey, another company implemented a solution. You heard about it through an uptime improvement solution related to software, smart manufacturing. You'll find most companies are very willing to share their experience. It's not like they hide it unless you're a direct competitor. And so you need to spend a little bit of time networking, making contacts. You got to spend some time on this, learn it, find the opportunities, hear where others are having successes. And then, an organization like Industry Reimagine 2030 maybe can help the world to scale that, but we're working on that. It is most of the progress in this space has been in large companies, and it's been large investments. there's an entire opportunity for small and mid-sized companies.
Yes.
And
Well, yeah, and we know that that's really the engine for our country in terms of manufacturing are these small to mid-sized folks. So it's an important area to address for sure.
it's probably the majority of the people in this call today would be my guess. So we may have companies here.
So another question that wanted to introduce another path down this conversation. As we move, I remember back in the 90s, we were putting computers on, using computers a lot more, right? And so we had to deal with basic skills on the part of the workforce and really get things advanced the workforce and their ability to handle computers. We have a question from the audience. Karen asks, what are the ways the community and educators can help prepare the talent pipeline for the shift to Industry 4.0 now?
Sorry, repeat the question, Mike. What are the ways?
What are the ways the community and educators can help prepare the talent pipeline for the shift to Industry 4.0?
I mean, I think you'd be surprised how much of that is going on. And I think what we need to do is get more of that to go on. So I know there's a high school near where I live that teaches the fundamentals of, they don't use the word smart manufacturing. I'm going to get the term wrong, and they don't call it Industry 4.0. But it's maybe the term is digital. They begin to teach students the fundamentals of digital. And of course, we have to recognize that my grandchildren are growing up with the digital world in front of them. My 3-year-old granddaughter could pick up my phone and dial her mom on my phone, and she's 3 years old. And they pick up a remote with a Roku streaming device and can go find a cartoon that they want to watch. They're exposed to this very early, and the schools are trying to help these younger people understand that in the educational environment. So I would say one is go find out what your local schools are teaching now, and perhaps get involved with the school board and ask them what are they doing to do more of that. Because this digital thought process, awareness of software, data, security, real-time digital transactions, the youth today kind of are growing up in this. Information is instantaneous. They can go Google something in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But they really don't understand it, and they don't understand how to leverage it in business. And the more of that we can do, turn that into a discipline versus growing up in it, is great. But you have to ask. Now, last point I'll make is here in Milwaukee, we went to a number of universities, not just in Wisconsin, and said, hey, we really believe you need labs that show this capability, and you need coursework to start teaching this. And universities are slow to change. We had to ask them multiple times to get them to begin to offer content, to get them to begin to put in some labs, because the labs are different too. It's not just like an electronics lab. It is a connected software environment with data and machines and automation and business systems kind of all wrapped around each other. And it's a slow journey. You have to ask, get involved yourself, find people who think like you do, and let your voice be heard. And we are making progress on that. I'm pleasantly surprised. This local high school I mentioned, I was shocked at the level and depth of what they're teaching, because there happened to be a inspired individual there in that high school that decided this was important. And nobody gets in the way of it when they start doing it, but it doesn't happen by itself.
Yes. It's just to add to your reflections on that. Locally, we have our technical colleges and our community colleges offer a manufacturing certificate, and integrating this sort of a digital awareness or digital training into those certificates is another way to, that way the folks that are applying for our jobs on the front line come prepared to understand that's what they're going to be exposed to, rather than no one told me, that kind of thing.
I'll add one other thing, Mike. There are some pretty good, the technical colleges have some pretty good accreditation programs out there to teach smart manufacturing. Again, if you go knock on the door of your local technical college, you'd be surprised what they have. We happen to have one here in Wisconsin called Gateway Technical College. They got an amazing lab. They teach a bunch of course content. That was driven, many of you might have heard about Wisconsin at one point was going to be home to Foxconn and the largest manufacturing facility in the United States, which never happened, by the way. But in getting ready for that technical college that was right near them really did some great work on offering course content and lab work on this. And there's a lot I've learned there's quite a few of them out there, some really neat things available in technical colleges. They seem to be most in front of this right now. They're in front of the high schools. They're in front of universities.
No, that's good. So I appreciate the insight there. That's fantastic. One of the things that I think about now as we think to the future, technology is changing so quickly today that it's nearly impossible for a small to mid-sized business to keep up with all the possible solutions and all the possible evolutions. Do you have any advice on how a business leader or a plant manager in a small plant can keep up with all the possible solutions that might be out there?
Wow. I'm going to say it this way. Their best way to keep up is to find a trusted advisor or an expert who's going to spend a lot of time on this. This is a subject, this can't be a hobby for you, because there's a lot of buzz and hype out there, and it's really hard to cut through the buzz and hype. Either you have to decide you are personally going to become far more knowledgeable on this, which means you're willing to spend a lot of time on it, classes, reading. There's a bunch of good reading out there, I will say, on a variety of websites. Now, which ones are most helpful and how do you find those? That's like sorting through lemmings in the sea. I mean, there's a lot of them. It's very difficult to find. You have to be willing to spend time on this, or be committed to having somebody that joins your organization that is the funnel to transmit the good things they hear into the things that are relevant to your organization. These resources, if you find these people, they are incredibly valuable. There are these hybrids. I call them hybrids. They're not a manufacturing engineer. They're not an industrial engineer. They're not a production guy. They're not an IT guy. They love all of that stuff. They're kind of geeky, and they just suck this stuff in like a sponge, and they help your organization say, boy, do you realize we could go do this? They're like translators.
No, that's a fantastic.
People hire them, grow them, love them, and don't lose them.
Good. That's really great. Well, I have one more question before we wrap up. Earlier, we spoke about the culture of standardization and how important that is for success in an Industry 4.0 journey. Are there other sort of cultural things that you would share with the group that are sort of paramount for success from your experience?
Sure. I'll throw a couple of quotes out there. Let's just say, Mike. One is respect for data. When something comes up, your first question should be, do we have data that describes this situation? Start with data. You will be, it's amazing. People don't start with data. They want to jump right to the solution. Well, what do we know about it? Start with the data that you know about something first. Respect for process. Don't try to shortcut something. It takes longer to work through a process, but if you consistently follow that process, it'll become muscle memory for the org, and they'll do it all the time, and they will get much better at driving things through systemic process approaches. 3, be very careful about security. Security can ruin your organization. So as you begin this journey of becoming more digital, more data-centric, make sure that you got firewalls that are ironclad and some bad person can't come in and send you a ransomware note and say, hey, your company shut down, send me a check for $3 million. It has happened to companies in all over the world, by the way.
Right.
Security is a really big deal. And I would say the last thing is celebrate when the organization is using data and process, and reward and recognize the organization. Even if they don't solve the problem, if they're doing it the right way through data and process, you want to reward the behavior. Start rewarding behavior and the improvement mentality versus our historical trend has been to reward outcomes. Effort in doing things through a digital data approach is more important than the results of that digital data approach. And you will begin to transform your company to, embrace digital, embrace data as the way to run the place, and you'll get much better at it. And the outcomes will happen. You just have to trust on the backside of that. The outcomes will happen. People try to do the right thing. But if they do it with data and process, they'll do it much more consistently and have bigger impacts.
Yeah, thank you. That's super. Well, I wanted just to give you a chance. Is there any last comments you'd like to share before we wrap up then? Maybe you just did, but anything else you want to add?
Hey, I'm happy to talk to anybody that might be interested in talking more about this topic. Everybody has their unique, I'm going to air quote, business cases. What's your problem? You might think it's unique. You'd be surprised. In my experience, the business cases that are out there are quite common. And you're probably not the first one to run into whatever when I say business case, what's the biggest challenge facing your organization? And how can you leverage digital to drive your next level of your company, your level of improvements? I'm happy to share my experience with anybody that's out there. I encourage you to continue to be involved in discussion groups like this. Worst case, it gets you thinking about it and you decide how much you want to be in it. It's okay to not be a leader in this space. Anytime there's a change like this, there are early adapters, there are people that come in the middle, and there's people that come in late. I don't think there's a right and wrong in this one. The early adapters face a lot of challenges. If you come in late and your competitors got there before you, you might be in trouble. But it's okay to come in late if your competitors aren't any more late than you are. But you just have to recognize this digital revolution that we're in is changing the world. Amazon is who is an Amazon Prime customer, and how has that affected the world that we live in? Well, the same thing's happening in manufacturing. There's tremendous changes and improvements that you can realize. You just have to decide when is the right time for you. Who are you going to trust as a partner, and where do you start? Those hard questions. Those are the hard questions, and I'll keep coming back to them. Ask for help. Learn it yourself, and have fun. It is fun to do this, by the way.
Yeah.
Technology is fun, and the younger employees in your workforce love it when you do this. They all think like this. So if you don't do it, you might lose some of those employees, by the way. They expect the world to be more digital.
Yeah, thank you, Lyman. That's excellent. So as we wrap up here, I'd like to thank you for joining us for this very insightful discussion today. And thanks to everybody also who joined us in the audience as well. We've really appreciated you hanging there with us for this past 45 minutes to an hour or so. If you like conversations like these, please look for them on LinkedIn Live or LinkedIn Audio through our Industry 4.0 club or group page. We host conversations in alternating weeks. Mondays, we focus on women in manufacturing. Tuesdays, we take on a technical topic related to the future of manufacturing. Wednesdays, we have conversations like this in our Fireside chat. And Thursdays, we focus on people, process, and culture, and are currently on Thursdays hosting a series on autism and manufacturing. So please join our LinkedIn page or visit our website at www.industry4.0club.com. Thanks again, Lyman. Really appreciate it. I want to wish everybody a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye-bye.